once you've completed your drawing in model space and want to print or make a PDF, you will want to switch to paper space. And you can do that a couple different ways. You can come over here to model and pick that, or you can come over here to one of your layout tabs. So I'm just going to pick it twice real quick. Sometimes if you just pick it once, it doesn't take. So in here, what you're looking at is the actual piece of paper. So before we do anything here, what we want to do is to set up a few things in our page setup manager. So you'll come down here to your layout tab, the one that's brighter than the other. You'll right click on that, page setup manager. In here, pick modify. And then in here, we have a few things that we need to set up. And the printer plotter will be the AutoCAD PDF general documentation. The other ones will work as well. I think the instruction videos have you pick another one, but this one is fine. I always use that one, the first one there that says PDF, not Bluebeam, but this AutoCAD PDF. So go ahead and pick that. And really, you really don't have to do anything else in here. Make sure you just notice that it's 8.5 by 11. Ignore this, ignore this, ignore this, ignore this. Up here, you'll want to select monochrome CTB. And to just double check everything as far as your pen assignments or pen weights, pick the edit button. And in this dialog box, we're just printing in black ink. So you have to make sure that all these colors, the colors that are using, the first 7, or rather the first 9 colors are the only colors we're using for this semester, that they all make sure that they all say black. Okay? So if you have color 1 switch to red and you think that's correct, it is not. It has to say black. So the rest of this here, you really don't need to do anything. And I had said something up here before. So if you see numbers here, that's incorrect. So you have to make sure that with the line weight, you pick the very top choice, use object line weight. So I think I had a couple other ones. I'm going to check here. There's another one, object line weight. Now I'm doing this because we already set the line weight, if you remember, in the layer properties, the layer manager over here. We set them to different line thicknesses. So over here, it has to say use object line weight. So I just want to double check. I have that color, and that color in my drawing. And they should all say black. So down here, all you have to do is pick save and close. And the only other thing you want to change for the drawing orientation, the door drawing will probably be the only one that we have to use portrait. All other ones will be in landscape form. And just pick OK and close. Okay, so in here, what you're looking at, again, is the piece of paper, the 8.5 by 11. You're looking at this line here, which is the viewport, and that's the window in our piece of paper that we can see through. And on the other side of that window is our model space. It's over here, okay? So what we have to do is to scale this correctly. And in doing so, first we have to select our viewport and make sure it's as big as the paper, or what I like to do is just extend it out into this gray zone, just like that. Now, if you had a viewport layer and turned it off in there, it wouldn't matter if it was in the paper like that, because you wouldn't see it. But I don't want to see that line in your drawing, so you can just extend it out like that. Now, if we wanted to center the door and we hold down our middle button on our mouse, our pan, we're moving the whole piece of paper. Okay? So in order to move just our door, we have to switch it back to model space, but not over here. We want to pick this word paper and switch it to model. Okay, so that's model space within our paper space view. So now when I hold down my middle button on the mouse, I can center it. Okay, so I'd like for you to do that. And it has to be at the right scale. So if you look down here, we've got a bunch of numbers. And this is where you set the scale. So let me pause a little bit by going over here back to my Page Setup Manager and go to Modify, and you'll see the scale here. As I said before, ignore this. You do not want to set the scale here. It should say 1:1 all the time, okay? So let's close that and get back to this scale here. This is where you set the scale. So in order to set the scale, what I would probably do, there's a couple different ways. You can set it within model or paper space. So if you're in model space, you can come over here and scroll up or down, and I believe it's 1 inch equals 1 foot. So go ahead and pick that. And if you notice, the door got a little bit bigger. So that's the correct scale. Now, in order for you to keep that scale, I would probably switch this back to paper space, because what happens if you zoom in and out with your scroll button here, you see you change the scale. And then you think, well, that might be the right scale, but you look at these numbers and you say, well, that doesn't make any sense. So what you have to do is go back up here again and scroll down to 1 inch equals 1 foot and pick there. So you see it moves slightly. So in order to avoid that, switch it back to paper space. So when you're in paper space and you zoom in and out, you're just zooming in and out of the whole piece of paper, and you're panning like that. So it's a little high on the page. You don't have to necessarily center it, but I like to. So I'm going to switch it back carefully, hold down the middle button, and just move my mouse down a little bit so it's a little bit more centered. Lift up, get back into paper space by picking on that word model, and now it's good. So if I zoom in and out, I'm not changing the scale. Now if you wanted to change the scale in paper space, by all means, you can do that by selecting the viewport here and then coming over here. See, we're already set at 1 inch 1 foot. So I'm just going to quickly change that to maybe 1/4 inch, and you see how small it got. So if you're in paper space, you can select the viewport and then come over here and pick the correct scale. Now the correct scale is what is in your assignments. So make sure that it's not always 1 inch equals 1 foot. It's different for different drawings. So go ahead and pick that. It'll scale it. To get rid of the grips here, you can just hit escape button or pick out here. Now, switching back and forth between model and paper, you can also place your crosshairs here, double pick it, and then it switches to model. To get back to paper space, you can pick out here twice and it'll switch it there. So that is how you scale your drawing properly. The other thing you should have on here is, of course, your name, and I like to see the project number or the assignment number here. So I would make sure that you are in paper space, and then over here in your annotate tab, let's pick this little text style, gets you to here. And what I like to see is an architectural style. So the one that we're going to be using is Stylus BT, this one here. So that's a little bit more architectural in its style. So you can go ahead and set current and just say yes and then close. So in order to write some quick text here, all you have to do is type the letters D as in dog, T as in Tom. So D, T, and then enter. And then look at the lower left-hand corner, and it'll say specify start point of text. So all you're going to do is just going to pick somewhere down here, like that. And then 3/16 is okay. That's the height that it is in real life. So that's fine. So you can just hit enter for that. And then the rotation angle, you want 0. In this class, we're only doing 0 or 90 degrees. So most of it's 0. It is defaulted to 0. So all you have to do is hit enter again. And then all caps all the time. So cap lock on, and then write your name, and then space over a little bit, and you can just put project 1. Okay, and then if I enter twice, that sets it. Now if you notice, it's really light, and that's because in my home tab I am on a thin layer right now, which is very gray, very light gray I should say, and it doesn't have much of a contrast. So later we'll have a text layer that we can place text in, but for right now I'm just going to put it in the layer that's red because that's thicker. So that's the thickest one, so I'm just going to switch it to thick like that. And if you wanted to, I'm going to zoom in a little closer. If you wanted to edit this or move this project over a little bit, just double pick it, pick inside here, and use your space bar to even it out. I always like to put it there and then enter again, and it's ready to go. So there's one more step that we need to do. We need to preview it. So what I like to do is come over to my layout tab and right click and go ahead and pick plot, and in here the lower left hand corner I'm going to pick preview. So this is what you should see. Now you're seeing this because of the educational version that I have at home, and I want you to zoom in on your drawing file because back here it looks like all the line weights are the same thickness. But if you zoom in, you can clearly see that we have some thin lines, some thick lines, and some medium lines. And that's how it should be. So if you don't see the thicknesses, then it's not going to be correct and you won't get credit for it. So make sure you use preview. So if it's all good to go, all you have to do is right click and pick plot. And then you will have this dialog box. And so in here, if you're working from MySCC, you're going to pick here and you are going to save it to your H drive. And then from there, you will email me that object and make sure it is a PDF here, file type. Okay, and that we don't have a choice because that's what we designated it in our Page Setup Manager. Okay, and so I'm just going to save it to my desktop right now, and I'm just going to pick Save. So when you see this here, it's finished.